The Earth Defense Force series started back on the PlayStation 2 in 2003, and it's been squashing giant alien insects and blasting giant robots ever since. And unfortunately, North America didn't get to experience the joy of blasting the giant bugs until the release of the Xbox 360 version of Earth Defense Force 2017. That was followed up a few years later by Earth Defense Force 2025, and now in 2015, we're getting to experience Earth Defense Force 4.1, The Shadow of New Despair, which is basically kind of a remastering and kind of Game of the Year version of Earth Defense Force 2025. The thing is there enough here for veterans of the series to sink their teeth into, and for newcomers, is this the time you finally join the fight against the evil alien bug menace? If you're unfamiliar with the Earth Defense Force series, think of it as kind of a giant B sci-fi movie. You're playing as a group of soldiers who are going through and trying to ward off the alien invasion of giant insects and alien robots and other menaces that are trying to, well, destroy Earth. The games never take themselves seriously, they're not supposed to. The storyline, dialogue, voice acting is all on the cheesy side, but it's on that kind of so bad it's good kind of line. The game features tons of missions and content, and for people that love to collect loot and get the best loot in each of the levels, you may find yourself playing for hours and hours just trying to get that best gun. The game has hundreds of hours, in all honesty, of gameplay because you're going to be trying to play through the game with all the various different classes, collect all the various different weaponry, and go through all the different difficulties. When you first start out the game, you're going to be given the options to pick what class you want to start off, and the game recommends checking out the Ranger class first. But what's great is the game never locks you into one class. You're not like picking a scenario and then you're stuck with a particular class for your entire run. You can switch any time that you like, and every class provides its own challenges and own unique weapons. That makes it fun to experiment and try which one fits your play style the best. And there are some that are going to be best for the single player experience, and other classes kind of work better as support roles for the multiplayer, as the game provides not only same system split screen multiplayer, but online multiplayer as well. The first kind of default class the game has selected is the Ranger class, and it even recommends that you start off with this one, but you don't have to. You could dive into any of them that you would possibly want to. The Ranger class is your base class. It's kind of like a random infantry soldier. You have a large variety of weapons, and that's what's great about the game is there's a bunch of different weapon types, and depending upon what class you have, you can hold different styles of weapons. For the Rangers, you have two different weapons that you can hold at one time. Usually I like to mix it up with like an assault rifle in one spot, and then a missile launcher with the other, but there's other things like sniper rifles or grenades or any which way that you would like to mix it up. You could actually have two rocket launchers if you truly wanted to. It's really fun because the game has unlimited ammo. You're not supposed to be bogged down by having to worry about, oh, I need to run over here and grab ammo because I'm running out. You do have to reload each of the guns once they do run out of whatever ammo they currently have in stock, but that only kind of becomes a minor convenience. As you may run out in a key battle, you may need to dodge roll a little bit out of the way. The class of Ranger is kind of that starting class. It'll get you used to the controls, and I can actually recommend it if you're a first-time player to the Earth Defense series. You may want to jump in with that just to get a hang of how the weapons work and the base controls work. Once you have that, though, you may want to check out one of the other classes. My personal favorite easily being the Wing Diver class. This is a jetpack-wearing Valkyrie-style character. They can jetpack and hover all over the world. I love being able to get really high up into the air, and this really works well when you get into the massive spaceship battles later on into the game. The variety type of weapons, once again, you can hold two with them, and I love the laser weapons, where you have kind of a constant stream of laser that's coming out. You also have sniper rifles and plasma missile launchers that come into play. Like I said, it's a lot of weapons, and each class has specific weapons to them, so it's fun to play around and experiment. Then you have the Air Raider class, which is one of the most interesting because it's not about your own firepower, it's about support. You get air raid calls where you can throw kind of a signal and just air bomb a whole massive pile of alien spiders or ants. You also can summon vehicles at any time time using your signal, and these work as your weapons. You can also have a base gun, and there's a smaller variety for the Air Raider class, but because it's mostly focused on support and the vehicle play, it's understandable why you don't have as many selectable weapons at that base. Like I say, the default weaponry that you use as the Air Raider is kind of not so great. But the vehicles that you get to play as Air Raider are a lot of fun. Not just tanks, but you also have like these power armors that are kind of remind me of the Tuchkamas from Ghost in the Shell, the way they're able to move around and blast enemies. This is a really, really fun element to the Air Raider class, and it's worth playing as it and getting the new equipment as it evolves, because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with them. And last but certainly not least is the Fencer class. These are kind of your heavy armor guys. They move extremely slow, though they do have a boost and a kind of big jump that they can do. But these guys are going to be using heavy weaponry, especially stuff like Gatling guns. And they dual wield their guns at the same time, with each trigger being a different one of their hands. So you can have a shield in one hand to be able to kind of fend off enemy blasts, but then pull out a Gatling gun with the other hand and just blast through. Or you have like these Lancer type guns that can fire out just direct shots. There's a decent variety, and you can have 2 sets of them. So it's not just what you have in your 2 hands, you can actually switch out and have 2 more guns in your hand. So there's a good amount of stuff here, and that makes up for the lack of mobility when it comes to the Fencer class. Once you pick your class, that's where the real fun begins. The first few missions, relatively easy. You'll be destroying giant ants in no time. However, the game slowly starts to introduce new enemy types, and it does so pretty quickly. You'll have giant spiders, actually multiple types of giant spiders, giant wasp, and then the aliens start invading with their various spacecraft, like the little ones come in, like TIE Fighter-esque. Then you'll have the giant spacecraft that you'll have to kind of figure out how you can actually fire up into it. The whole time it's dropping more insects onto the battlefield. You'll have the giant walking Hector creatures, giant shield things, and then the dragons. I mean, once the dragons get involved, all bets are off the table. For returning players of Earth Defense Force, there's a new type of dragon in the game, which is this massive Godzilla-X creature that is a blast to try to battle. There's also some new mutant types. There are giant red ants in the game, but then you can actually get evolved giant red ants and a few other different types of mutant evolutions that are added to this particular version of the game. Now, the game does a good job of slowly introducing the new enemies. Usually a mission is solely based on that new enemy type. It doesn't drop usually 4 or 5 different new types of enemies into the battlefield. So you can pick a mission and kind of learn how each of the enemies work, what you have to watch out for, what you have to figure out how the best way to take them out. So that's a big plus for newcomers that are jumping into the game. In order to battle the giant alien menace, you're also going to need some massive firepower, and the game has a good amount of variety of weapon types, depending upon what class you're using, but it also has a good amount of weapons per type. And you earn weapons not by buying them or just be given them, you earn them from enemy drops. Basically, you'll defeat an enemy and they can drop one of 3 different styles of crates, either health, large or small, your weapons crates, and your armor crates. Weapons crates are going to be curved towards what difficulty you're playing on. So if you're playing on easy or normal, you get a weapon, it's going to be a lower end style weapon. But if you're playing on hardest or inferno difficulty, it's going to be a much better weapon. And difficulties aren't locked in the game, so as long as you've completed a mission before it, you can jump right into the inferno difficulty. So if you want to start off mission 0, go right to the hardest difficulty, you can, and possibly get a really good weapon early on. But of course, the difficulty being what it is, you're probably going to find yourself getting your butt kicked if you try to jump right into that. The armor crates, you basically have a certain set amount of health per class that you're playing as, and every time you pick up an armor crate, it goes up a very small smidge. You'll find tons of armor crates laid on the battlefield once you clear out a giant horde of enemies, so you'll always want to gather as much of the armor crates as you can to try to get your health up as high as possible before going too far into the game, because as soon as you start getting into like the 30s and 40s and 50s in the missions, the enemies start dealing a ton of damage, and you may find your character getting wiped out like that. Earth Defense Force 4.1 is a massive game. It actually can be a little bit overwhelming once you kind of start getting a little bit farther and realize, wow, this game just keeps going and going. If you played 2025, there was, I think, 85 or so missions in that, but there's close to 90 in Earth Defense Force 4.1, and that's just for single player. The multiplayer has actually close to 100, and I'll tell you right now, if you can get a buddy that can get into the game with you, you're going to have a lot of fun, because you can do the local split screen, and it works perfectly fine, and the online multiplayer, I had no issues with my time experiencing it. When you factor in also there's 5 different difficulties for you to go through and try to beat, plus 4 different classes to experience each mission type with, you could pour hundreds and hundreds of hours into this game easily and still not do everything or find every piece of weapon loot. Graphically and technically, the game looks and ran fine. I never really ran into massive slowdown. There was some slowdown, I have to say, but it never really hindered my gameplay. I didn't really run into too many graphical or technical glitches. I did have a couple of times of ragdoll physics where my character kind of blasted off into the corner, like after a big explosion or something, which was a little bit weird, but it didn't happen often, and definitely didn't take away from my experience. I guess kind of chalked it up to just the goofiness of a game like this. The graphics, though, are, of course, they're not going to be the most amazing. This is an older game that's kind of been retouched up, but the retouching up looks fantastic, and it ran great on the PS4. The coolest part about the graphic system now, though, is the caves. It's now a completely dark cave. You have just a little bit of light, and you're kind of going through these tight, small corridors, and all of a sudden, you're walking through this dark hallway, and then, boom, a giant horde of spiders comes flying towards you. You start backing up and blasting away as fast as you can. That's where the real kind of adrenaline rush and some of the most exciting moments of the game. Then when you get to the bigger giant creatures like the dragons, and you're kind of like flying around and trying to just get in those rocket launcher shots, and you finally get that victory, it's a ton of fun. The missions can get repetitive, of course, because you are going through every level after level, blasting a lot of the same enemy types. Since there are so many missions, it does a good job of spreading out those different new types of enemies, and it does try to mix it up. You're not going to fight 10 levels of just ants in a row. It will be a few of ants, and spiders are introduced, sometimes mix it up a little bit, and then bring back the aliens like the Hectors and the giant spacecraft, and then some new stuff may start popping in. Though if you try to play the game for long periods of time, it may start to grind on you a little bit. So in the end, I'm giving Earth Defense Force 4.1 a 7 out of 10. I had a ton of fun in the single player, blasting through all the different types of enemies, collecting lots of loot, and I still have a lot of different difficulties. Trying out the different classes really helped out. I liked mixing it up between my classes, picking different types for different missions. And the trophies are some of the hardest, so if you want to try to get a platinum in Earth Defense Force, you're going to be spending quite a lot of time. It's also one of the best couch co-op experiences I've had on the PlayStation 4. And for returning veterans, if you've already exhausted everything from 2025, you may want to hold off just a little bit. I don't know if there's enough new content. However, if you just kind of like dabbled in that, or you're new to the series altogether, give it a try. It's a lot of bug blasting fun, that is for darn sure. It's not for everyone, it does get a little bit monotonous, and it is loot heavy base, so you really have to kind of focus on trying to get all the best weapons. And it's not a game that takes itself seriously, so if you're expecting some kind of like big, epic, awesome storyline, you're not going to get it here. But if you've ever wanted to kind of live your dream of playing through a B sci-fi movie like Independence Day or Starship Troopers, of course, you're probably going to have a lot of fun. But with that, that's going to wrap up this review of Earth Defense Force 4.1, The Shadow of New Despair. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed. I also, though, real quickly have to shout out Xseed, who is the publisher of the game. I love them. I buy almost any game they end up putting out, and they're one of the few game companies still putting out manuals, full-blown colored manuals for their games, and I just have to praise that as a game collector. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching.